Morning. We'll call this coordinated committee meeting to order. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. We have one from Councillor Watson related to the general government section on staff report 64.4. Grants to organizations, member of Steinert Granite Curling Club will vote on all other matters. And under deputations, presentations, and petitions, we have one. And good morning, Mr. Farkas, and Mr. White joining you at the table?
He is.
Okay, if you'd like to come forward, that's great. Just to remind you, I believe you have 10 minutes to present.
I think we'll get out of here at about 2 before play. So, Your Worship, members of council and staff, I'm Richard White. This is Les Farkas. We're here from Skydive Wasaga Beach. Today we are seeking approvals for the 2019 Canadian National Parachuting Championships and Flight Festival.
Starting August 31st and running until September 6th will be the Canadian National Parachuting Championships with over 100 competitors. The first 3 days, August 31st to September 2nd, running concurrently will be Flight, an aviation-based festival with not just parachuting but also RC demonstrations, drone races, live music. We will require the SL 100 stage. We will have a vendor village, beer garden, small midway type rides as well. We see this as a perfect opportunity to showcase all Wasaga Beach has to offer, and have already been in contact with Wasaga Beach Paintball, who has offered to set up a laser tag within the confines of one of the baseball diamonds, Free Spirit Tours for their canoe and stand-up paddle rentals, and quite a few other local businesses have expressed interest in setting up and being a part of the event. We will require use of the entire park for the Flight Festival portion, that's August 31st to September 2nd, and for the remainder of the days be scaled back just to the Skydive Wasaga Beach facilities, as well as a couple of small event tents and use of the main building for a judge's room. We would also like to request financial aid from the town in the amount of $5,000 to use for advertising and promotions. We do want to go broad spectrum on this and get as much coverage as we can. This is obviously currently a work in progress, so we're seeking approval in principle so that we can start the process of tying down the ends and getting approvals for things and submitting money with applications and that kind of thing.
So just in conclusion, we're seeking event approval, the donated use of the sports park. We'd like to be able to borrow the SL 100 stage, of course the $5,000 in promotional support. And we would also like to extend an invitation for any member of council to parachute in as part of the opening ceremony. We really like the idea of throwing the mayor from the plane.
I bet you do.
How about ballooning out? Would you do a balloon? If not a jump, would you do a hot air balloon?
I can cheer from the ground.
Okay.
Okay,
So,
thank you very much. Is there any questions or comments? Mr. Boston?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Again, when I was reading this the other day, a lot of stuff comes to mind, and sometimes we come to the table with some biases. So I want to mention the name of Kelvin Brundrett. Kelvin Brundrett, no one knows here.
Oh.
Is one of my wife's family members who was an avid skydiver and a photographer, and was on July 27th, 1991, was killed in a skydiving accident while taping a tandem dive, while photographing it. And he's received the Governor General Star of Courage and the Carnegie Hero Fund recipient. And so, as I'm sitting there, you know, your offer to skydive, I promised that day I would never do that.
Yeah.
But it does bring a bias to the table. You know?
It does, sure.
But that being said, I have had the opportunity to sit in the field at the skydive and watch friends of mine hurl themselves out of a perfectly good plane and land safely within 50 feet of the target. So, you know, in spite of that little bias, I'm strongly in support of this. I think it's a great idea. Well, I don't think jumping out of the plane is a great idea, but hey, I think it's an interesting thing for the town. I understand, and you had said previously, you've got a motivated self-interest in
Of
packing the
course.
chute right and
Of
doing it correctly,
course.
as does everyone who does this. So just a long way to say I'm in support of this in principle, but I will respectfully decline any offer to jump out of a plane. So that was my comment on this. And sorry, and a final comment too. The in-kind stuff is all great. I would like to see a little more itemization as we move along into the cash.
Of course.
Thank you.
Thank you. So you said $5,000 towards advertising that you'd like
Yes.
the town to give. Where do you see yourself advertising to spend that?
I'm hoping, right now I have a letter of support from Chorus, so I think I might have the airwaves covered. I'm hoping to extend into the television part of things. I have a production, so I can eliminate a lot of the cost in terms of creating an ad or that kind of thing.
But do you see it local or do you see
Oh,
it
I see
Toronto?
No, Toronto for sure, broad spectrum. Toronto, Mississauga, Brampton. I'd like to attract as many as we can. It's the Labor Day long weekend. And like I said, I think it's a really great opportunity for the local businesses to be able to showcase within you, to kind of, if, for lack of a better word, put Mississauga's best foot forward and say, here, look, this is what we have to offer. And then I will be having shuttles going back and forth to the beach for the competitors. So I'll probably be able to work that in as well for guests if necessary.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I think Councillor Kenny and then Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Your Worship, to both Leslie and Richard. Awesome event. I love the concept. I love the whole idea that it's a national event, and heaven's sakes, yes, it's gonna help with the community and the commercial aspect of it and draw people to the beach. So I'm in full support.
Thank you.
Councillor Wells?
Yeah, I'm certainly supportive of it as well, and like David though, I've grown up wondering why anyone would want to jump out of a very good aircraft, but anyway. The sports park, Leslie shared with me their plans for the utilization of the sports park and the landing sites being in the soccer pitches, and you know, I have been forever very protective of the grounds of the soccer pitches, so I guess I'm thinking that we're not going to have vehicles out on the soccer pitches
none at all,
whatsoever.
none at
This
all.
is just a landing, and
Yes,
so I just wanted to clarify that.
Absolutely.
That we're not running vehicles over that, because if it happens to be a damp, which I hope it isn't, but if it happens to be a damp or a wet period of
gets
time,
soft.
it would destroy the
Yeah, no, the
soccer
LZ needs to
pitches.
be a protected area for safety at all.
Yeah, of course. Okay, thanks. I'm fully supportive.
Councillor Watson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'm very much in support of the event. I talked with both the proponents and very satisfied with it. Hopefully, we may not be using any Boeing 737s. to jump out of.
No Max 8s,
Max 8s or 9s.
Other than that, thank you.
I just have a final question. I'm also very supportive, but I have not attended a national parachute competition. I would imagine it's something that a lot of people would want to go and watch, but do you have any information as to what you expect in attendance or what the attendance has been at previous events?
Attendance at previous events aren't really comparable because typically they don't open to the public. They are normally catering. The problem with skydivers is they cater to skydivers, and I always tease them. I say, you know, you can have the best rock concert in the world if you don't tell anybody, know it's coming. So this is kind of a new model for them where we're inviting the public to come and see what we do. We feel that, first of all, skydiving is one of the most popular things on the internet. In fact, those wingsuit videos are the most viewed videos that are out there per capita. The most viewed streaming event of all time was the guy jumping from space, the Red Bull event. So we feel the audience is there and it's time to open the doors and welcome them in.
But in saying that too, like to the people on the ground, the best part of the show is literally going to be the last few hundred feet of their land. So that's why we have other aspects of the day to occupy their time, so they're not sitting there staring up at dots in the sky. And we do have screens, and we do have other ways for them to kind of see what's going on.
The action is going on, but we expect somewhere around about 5,000 people. That's kind of the target we're striking for, 5,000 or above.
Yeah, there are a lot of competitors as well too.
Great. Wish you all the best of luck. Thank you very much. I believe this will be discussed later in the day then. So.
And
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a question more to Leslie. I've had the pleasure of looking at or viewing some of the videos that you've produced over the years, and they're certainly of high quality. And I was just wondering, is there an opportunity to build in the Wasaga Beach promotion as a tourist area as part of the video, as part of the production that you're going to be doing?
100% yes. 100% yes. That is the focus of this. The Nationals itself, I believe we wouldn't necessarily need approval for, because we already have the agreement to use the landing areas as an operation. What we really want to do is make this into something that will really draw the crowds into town here and really drive some traffic to us. So that's a big part of the focus.
If I may, Mr. Chair, just supplementary, as a video that we can use in the future as well.
Of course,
you know, as a part of our promotion as a community for tourism.
Would love to do it.
Thank you.
Okay then, it's moved by Councillor Wells and seconded by Councillor Kenny. Resolved that the Community Service Section of Coordinating Committee recommends to Council that it approve in principle hosting Canadian National Parachuting Championships August 31st to September 6, 2019 at the Wasaga Sports Park.
Normally we would have a deputation, and then we would close that and invite staff to the table if there was any questions of staff on that part. So I'm just looking to see, are we doing that today?
Well, we can, I think.
Okay.
So.
I think we usually have an opportunity to ask staff questions. And
yes, if you can come
not
to the
really a
table.
question, but I think that an event like this is terrific. It's like a huge sports tournament. All those skydivers are going to come with families.
Yes.
And I guess maybe my question to that is, will you be reaching out to our host hotels?
Of course, have kind of loosely touched quickly,
Okay.
but again, was waiting to get approvals before I get people excited and say, well, I'm going to be having 100 people plus families coming to stay, and spread them out amongst the hospital, of course.
Okay. So I would like an opportunity to engage with you and
Of course.
see if we can further promote together.
Of course.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Angela or Chris, do you?
Next.
Thank you.
okay, so I guess my comment to staff would be that I support the event. I think it's fantastic. I think that if the town is giving advertising dollars towards something like this, I would want to see where that advertising dollars is going to be spent, and that we get the receipts for that, to ensure that we as a town are maximizing where we're spending advertising dollars. So I wouldn't want to see it spent just locally. I think we need to be going outside, and we need to make sure that that's what it's spent on.
Go ahead.
Certainly, through you, Mr. Chair, I would suggest that there's also the in-kind piece that we could balance out with this $500,000 or $5,000.
They got really excited back there.
Just improve the scale.
New plane. We just bought the airplane.
Well, almost half of it.
At any rate, and that could be a piece we could explore and come back to lay out both of those elements.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any additional comments? Okay, Councilor Bray, or sorry, Deputy Mayor Bray.
Thank you. Through you to staff. Today we're just approving the event in principle, I think, and then will it come back with a full report that explains dollars, maybe has to try the sample budget to help us approve the 5,000? Is that a correct assumption?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, that's correct. So I've written a report for the approval in principle as we work through the details of exactly how the event is going to unfold. So that's what we propose right now. We have had initial meetings with the Director of Public Works and Parks so that he's aware of everything that's happening in the sports park. So far the conversations have been quite positive, and I can definitely bring a report back sooner.
Thank you.
Councilor Wells, did you have another comment?
I just thought maybe we should move a second motion afterwards that council propose that or support the mayor in her participation as a skydiver in the event. We could just move that as a separate motion, perhaps.
Yeah, I'm thinking not, Councilor.
Okay, I would think you would nominate me, but. Anyhow, thank you very much, and we've already read the motion. Should I read it again, or do you think we're good? Okay. So again, moved by Councillor Wells and seconded by Councillor Kenny, resolved that the Community Service Section of Coordinated Committee recommends to Council that it approve in principle hosting Canadian National Parachuting Championships August 31st to September 6th, 2019 at the Wasaga Sports Park.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Mayor Byfolchi.
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Bray.
In favor?
Councillor Foster.
In favor.
Councillor Kinney.
In favor.
Councillor Watson.
In favor?
Councillor Wells.
In favor.
And Chair Belanger.
In favor?
Thank you. That carries on a vote of 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you.
Unfinished business, we just have the signed bylaw review. I don't, does anyone want to comment on that? Okay, forward. Other agency reports, we have the Fire Department monthly report. Morning, Chief.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of council.
The floor is yours.
Should have stuck with my original plan of showing up after the delegation. They just were talking me into jumping, so I'll think about it. You go, I go.
Yeah. It's not happening.
No? We'll see. Okay, so the fire department responded to 110 calls for service in the month of February. Nothing really notable in that month. However, the last week we did have a couple of calls that I'm sure council and the public were aware. Tuesday last week we had a fire in the compactor behind Canadian Tire. Now this is the third occurrence since we've had that store. This is the first time with the current owner. They have a system at the back where there's a chute with a steel door, and it sends product that they're disposing of. It's not garbage, it's garbage, but it's more product that they want to destroy. So the plan is to not put things in with batteries still in it. And we know that's what's happening in all these occasions, that they forget and something gets put in with a battery, it gets crushed, and then eventually it causes a fire. So the system is safe. It is built for safety, so that if that type of thing does happen, the fire does not come back into the building. There is the steel door that stays shut. But again, you have to deal with it. So these bins have to be pulled apart from the chute. So everything was frozen, so that was a challenge to start. And then, so the mechanics of it were frozen. We did get it apart, but then you have to move it away from the building. So in the past, we've been able to use their tow motor, no traction, so it wouldn't pull it. We tried using our fire truck because it's a lot of weight, so it was just going to snap the strap, so it didn't work. So the company was called that deals with the disposal of these units. So they came from Angus, and were able to load it onto the truck on fire. So they were given direction to take it to Collingwood landfill. I'm not sure why it wasn't the closest landfill in Clearview, but so I called the fire department and talked to the deputy chief in Collingwood, said, I'm sending you a bin of fire. She questioned, what? So I said, but it's okay, I'm gonna follow it all the way in. So anyway, going down the road, I'm following this truck, smoke pouring out of it, people flashing their lights, trying to get the truck to pull over, and I rode behind with my lights on, trying to indicate, I know this is on fire, it's okay. So it was quite a scene. We did take the back roads. I wanted to go down First Street and Collingwood, I had more fun. But, anyway, as soon as it emptied and it was no longer compacted, it erupted into flames. So the landfill operators, they just put some snow on it with their loaders, and Collingwood Fire did come out and meet us there. But anyway, it was kind of a big deal for a bit there. So. And then I did send council an email regarding the fire we had on Saturday behind a gas fireplace. Now, in my 29 years, this is the first time I've ever seen this happen. So when the public hears about it and these things get out, I don't want people panicking. I mean, have your gas fireplace serviced and looked at. This is a very rare occasion. Now, this fireplace, the owner indicated that he had left it running most of the all of the evening, early evening, all the way through the night, like on, not on a thermostat where it's kicking on and off. It was running solid. Now, gas fireplace is not meant to heat your home. That's what your furnace is for. So it's not meant to supplement a furnace. So they shouldn't really run permanently for that many hours. Should they be able to and not start a fire? Yes. We do know this was serviced 5 weeks before, but there's some work that was done that we're looking into. TSSA is involved because of the gas, and then all insurance companies, they send their own investigators as well. So this one's being investigated by 3 parties, us being one of them. But it doesn't, it's nothing to start panicking about and say, oh, I don't want to use my gas fireplace anymore. But because, like I said, that's the first time I've seen something like that. But firefighters did a great job. It was out at Blue Beach, so that was a bit of a response distance, but it was a quick knockdown on the outside, and inside there was significant damage to the fireplace and that wall, but a lot of salvage was done to move furniture and even downstairs in the basement where some water was getting in, move a lot of stuff. So there was minimal damage considering what we arrived to. We really thought it was going to get into the roof and we would have had a fully involved structure fire on this one. So it was a good call, a good result. So. And other than that, we're getting real busy with requests to, spring's coming, so there's events coming and requests for fire department participation, and community groups asking us, booking us to come out and do fire safety and emergency management chats, and business as usual. So that's all, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The first instance, the fire behind the Canadian Tire, cost-wise, for the costs involved, is that picked up by the store?
So through you, Ms. Chair, it was an on-duty staff response only, so there was no additional cost to call in staff. So really there was no cost. So that's something we generally won't bill for. Yeah.
The truck coming up from
all Canadian Tire, yeah.
That's all there.
Yeah, absolutely. And so at one point there was discussion about bringing in Cal's Towing or something, a large, towing company that could pull that out. And if we had have called them in, we have a bylaw that allows us to bill the store. Like, we can make the decision to bring in additional resources and invoice the store owner. So we wouldn't have incurred costs anyway. The only cost that could have been incurred is if we felt we needed a second alarm and we're bringing back the off-duty firefighters and the volunteers, then there's a cost.
Go ahead and just supplement on the structure fire. Would it have anything to do with the installation or clearances to a wood surface? Would that, or you have to check into that, I guess, I suppose. But that was my first thought, that maybe it was installed in the clearances or the wood closer.
So for you again, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so they're going to look at all the installation, the clearances. It looked to be proper. Now, your vent pipe also has to go out on an incline. It can't be straight or on a decline, so it's going to be hard to tell whether that was installed properly at the beginning. But this has been in operation since 2014. What the part that we're interested in is what happened when it was serviced, not because they had a draft that kept blowing the fireplace out. So somebody come in to deal with that, and we don't know whether they put some extra insulation in or some spray foam, or we don't know. So we're looking at that. We're trying to get in touch with the person that did that work to see if there was anything that could have caused it. So, but I mean, it's an insurance claim regardless. Depending on what the contractor did, there could be issues there, but that'll get sorted out through the investigation.
Thank you.
Councillor or Deputy Mayor Bray.
Through you to the fire chief. Thank you for the update. I know when the fire happened, you sent the pictures and you sent the update to council, which is always nice, so that when you get those concerns. you can address them. I was concerned to see the pictures you had sent on social media, and I just, I know I replied to you, and I just wasn't sure if, you know, how we prevent that from happening again, because these are private homes that you are.
Yeah, that was noted. Appreciate that. Yeah, thanks.
Any further comments? Okay, thank you very much, Chief. Moved by Councillor Kenny and seconded by Councillor Wells, resolved that the Community Service Section of Coordinated Committee receive the March 2019 Fire Department report for information.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Mayor Byfolchi?
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Bray?
In favor?
Councillor Foster?
In favor.
Councillor Kinney?
In favor.
Councillor Watson?
In favor.
Councillor Wells?
In favor.
Chair Belanger?
In favor?
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Okay, we'll now move to the consent agenda, and we will approve everything except a couple of pulled items. One is 3.5.3, smoking in public places bylaw options. 3.5.8, parking space to facilitate special events in Playland Park Square. And the final one is 3.7.5, which is OPP policing, fourth quarter 2018, Wasaga Beach statistics. So moved by Councillor Foster and seconded by Councillor Watson, resolved that the Community Service Section of Coordinated Committee does hereby receive the March 14, 2019 consent agenda, items 3.4 through 3.4.3, and that the recommendations contained therein be adopted as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Mayor Byfolchi?
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Bray?
In favor?
Councillor Foster?
In favor.
Councillor Kinney?
In favor.
Councillor Watson?
In favor.
Councillor Wells?
In favor.
Chair Belanger?
In favor?
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Okay, moving to the first pulled item, 3.5.3, smoking in public places bylaw options, pulled by Councillor Kenny.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was going to address staff in regards to, one, I think it's a good move to make sure that we advertise thought process, and I'm just wondering from Jeff's point of view, I've got a question about option 2 and smoking, vaping in public places. When we say smoking, does that include cannabis?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, it includes cannabis, so it's all smoking. It's just treated, both tobacco as well as cannabis, treated similarly.
Okay, thank you. And one further, Your Worship. Have you had the ability to reach out to our partners over the OPP to see what their thought process was with regards to not what we're doing, but how they're handling the new legislation?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I haven't had a good conversation with anybody over the OPP yet. I had brief conversations with some of the officers, but not any senior management over there. And I know resources is limited to help us with something like this, but it would be a good discussion to engage as we bring this bylaw forward.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And in reading this, this has been before us from early December, this whole cannabis legislation, and I said at the time it was bad legislation at federal and provincial level, and fortunately nothing has changed my mind on this. My biggest concern with what we've got and the options we're presented is the provincial park considerations, and in the paragraph there, it's basically saying there's no update as to whether they're not going to impose restrictions on the consumption of cannabis within the provincial park, and I go, considering the amount of provincial parkland we have, it creates a huge issue. In my opinion, because we have places that look exactly the same that fall under different jurisdictions. And so this to me, again, is a bad legislation that's been shoved down to the municipal level. Like, you can smoke anything on beaches, you know, the far side of Beach 1 and part of Beach 2 and 3, and you know, it's, to me, this has to be consistent, and this is where I believe eventually this will be like the original Smoke Free Ontario Act, where they had the municipalities make their own independent decisions, and then 2 years later the province came in and made blanket regulation. I still believe that the province should be saying no to parks across the board, or yes, that's my own view, but I mean, there should be a consistent thing, so people in any community, whether they're here or Collingwood or Elmville or, you know, the GTA, have the same set of rules. And so this, I think, continues to present a huge problem for us, is the amount of provincial land that we have that may well be regulated different than others. So that's my comment.
Go ahead, Mr. Chair. Just to clarify, Councillor Foster, there was might have made a miscommunication on that section of the report. They haven't made a decision yet not to regulate there.
Oh, okay.
So they're still evaluating options. I've heard anything from as far as making the beach provincial park smoke-free to having designated smoke-free areas.
Yeah.
So I've heard discussion happening. There's no further update at this point.
Okay. Well, that to me is critical, because we have to mesh with.
Yes, Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It was a concern of mine too, and part of it would be through our forested land, the ability for someone to flick a cigarette butt or marijuana. Starting a fire is a very real and present danger in my mind, and I would really like to see the parks do an outright ban on that. And we also have control for this year, I guess, of Beach 1 and 2, so we have to take that in consideration if we're enforcing that, I guess, how that's going to go. Is there any decision about people with medical marijuana certificates, how the enforcement would be? And part of this too is, it's always the enforcement. You make the bylaw, but the enforcement part of it is always difficult, and time constraints, staff constraints, and the rest of it. But the medical, if someone produces a card, are they going to be exempt from enforcement?
Mr. Chair, that's correct. Yeah, they're excluded from enforcement of the Smoke Free Ontario Act for medical purposes.
Right. So they can be like you know, if they take a pill or oils, but if they're actually smoking one, they're still okay. That's correct. Okay. What? Can you supplement on within a public building like the Recplex? Do they still have to be the 20 meters, or like they can't be any closer than someone smoking a cigarette? I hope.
Through Mr. Chair, yeah, that's correct. There's still general provisions that would apply, so it's still the distances from the buildings, the playgrounds, the general distances, but it can't be prohibited.
Thank you.
Our Deputy Mayor Brady.
Thank you. I just think it's important that whatever we do this year with Beach 1 and 2 is consistent with 3, 4, 5, and 6, obviously for this year for ease, but also if we do hand that back to the parks next year, it's kind of confusing to say, yeah, this year you can do it, but next year you can't. So I think we just need to be very cautious this year, not to put rules into play that we won't be able to enforce in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, because it is the provincial park, we do enforce their laws. So it's not our municipal bylaws that we can pass and enforce on their property. So if they bring forward something, it'll be consistent across their beaches, I would presume. But as far as it goes, we don't have as much influence on their decision for smoking in the provincial park. So.
Councillor
Mr. Chair, through to Jason, I agree with my peers with regards to we've got to work with the provincial parks on their stuff and that, but I think we can't lose sight of the factor that we as council look after the town, and if the town wants us to do something, whether or not the park does it or not, I don't think we should be swayed by that provincial entity to act as what the town wants us to do. I hope that makes kind of sense.
comment on that, Jeff? Is that Do we have the legislative right to create a bylaw that would apply to parkland?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I think Councilor Kenny, you were saying, you know, we can pass a bylaw on municipal property, in municipal areas, but not in provincial lands, and we do have the authority to do so.
Yes, Councilor Wells.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think as I've read the report, I think I'm generally supportive of what turned out, I think, to be option 2, the restricting of smoking and vaping in public places, largely because we are at least making every attempt to be a family-oriented area. And the second part of that is that, as I think it was Councillor Watson or Councillor Foster said, you know, don't make a rule that you can't enforce. But on the other hand, if you don't have the rule, you can't enforce anything. So if it becomes an issue, if you don't have the rule in place, you can't backtrack to enforce anything to occur. So I'm leaning to favoring the just restricting all smoking, vaping in public places within the town of Wasaga Beach. And certainly I think we can do signing and so forth around the community and to look after that. The beach does become an issue. I understand that and would have to be resolved. But I look at it as again, if you don't have anything in place, then you have nothing to stand on. And so it's just my comment.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I can just respond. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I tend to agree with you in that aspect. I mean, if the Smoke-Free Ontario Act has brought forward a bunch of prohibitions for smoking in public places with minimal resources to enforce it. One of the significant upsides of option 2 is if we do bring forward that bylaw, we have, you know, our seasonal staff that's going to be readily available to address issues throughout the busy months of the beachfront. So they won't have to wait for a response for, you know, increased waiting times for response from the tobacco enforcement officers. So, you know, if we do pass a bylaw, that gives us that tool to enforce and to solve those problems quicker. So that's enough said.
Thank you. Any additional comments? Okay, then I'll read the motion moved by Councillor Wells and seconded by Councillor Kenny. Resolved that the Community Service Section of Coordinated Committee does recommend to Council that it receive the staff report of the Acting Senior Municipal Law Enforcement Officer on the options to amend the smoking in public places bylaw, and that the Community Service Section of Coordinated Committee does recommend that Council consider one of the following 4 options to improve further restrictions on smoking, vaping, cannabis, and/or tobacco. Option 1, prohibit cannabis consumption in public places. Option 2, restrict all smoking, vaping in public places. Option 3, evaluate the need to impose restrictions throughout 2019. And option 4, impose no further restrictions. And that the Community Service Section of Coordinated Committee recommend that Council approve option as follows. Am I hearing option 2? So, well, write that in, Joy. Do we understand it?
Sorry, I actually have a further question. Because I was leaning towards option 3. I was going to gather some statistics this year and then make a better decision next year. But when I reread number 3, it said, sorry, oh, no, I just wanted to ask, how many smoking complaints did you have last year? Like, is this a big issue?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we didn't have a significant amount of complaints. The amendment to the Smoke-Free Ontario Act to be more restrictive was in October 2018, so it wasn't as strictly enforced last year. I can confirm that the majority of complaints we received for smoking was on the beach. It wasn't in municipal areas, so unfortunately our hands were a little bit tied with those kind of complaints. But you know, I'd say throughout the summer, less than 20 complaints approximately, and that's more or less on the beachfront. But from the bylaw side of things in municipal areas, I can count on one hand. I might be patting the past year or 2.
Thank you. So then my recommendation would be option 3, to gather information through 2019 and make hopefully a better decision in 2020. as a business owner, I think the health unit was starting to make a really proactive approach to actually go out to businesses and talk about smoking on patios and talk about smoking in public, you know, in terms of staff and visitors. So I think that's probably part of this, that as education ramps up, that it'll make a better decision if we wait a little bit.
Councillor Kenny?
I was just going to ask the chair whether or not we should look at option 2, option 3, and do a handbook. Can we do that, or how do we do this?
Well, I'll ask if there's any comments, and then we can go through, I guess, and do a show of hands. Councillor Wells.
I guess if we proceed with option 2, which is my preference, that doesn't eliminate option 3 from happening as a part of the process through 2019. I would hope that through the year that bylaw would then come back to us in the fall and say, this is working, or it's not working, and here's where we've seen the difficulties. I don't see any restriction of option 3 by endorsing the other options. I think it just goes hand in hand.
Yes, Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, I was leaning to 3. I believe it's similar to the decision we made previously about location of cannabis shops. Is sitting there saying, this came down quickly. I believe there's a chance here for study by staff, but I also think it's an option that will allow the community to share their feelings through option 3. If we're doing option 2 that's restricting it all, and let's be honest, I'm a non-smoker here, but there's people who it's a serious addiction for them, or lifestyle choice, let's call it that, and to sit there and severely, as long as it goes within the Smoke-Free Ontario Act, I suppose option 2 will work. But I do believe, we've always said we want to make the right decision. So having the Smoke-Free Ontario Act deal with the issues they are, and option 3 say, let's get staff looking at it and let's proactively go out to the public and say, what's your views? And then it also, in a way, we could use those statistics to pressure the parks themselves, saying, look, and I don't know how, but if 95% of people say they don't want it, we can go there. If it's 50-50, then it's a coin toss, or it may go the other way. But that's my view on option 3, and I'm happy to support that.
Mayor Mike Folke, and then Councillor Watson.
Thank you. I would support option number 3. The complaints I've heard or throughout the campaign time last year was on the beach. So that would be, you know, we can't do anything about that. So I would support number 3 just to get a little bit more information. Like Councillor Foster said, we might have something that we can go to the province with and go that route.
Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm in support of option 4 personally, and it falls in line with most of our neighboring municipalities. Would it be fair to ask, Jeff, you being the enforcement arm of this, what works best for your department going forward?
Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. I would likely support option 2. If we pass a bylaw and it's not strongly enforced, it's there if we need it. Like if there's no complaints, that's fine. But you know, it's going to be dealt with on a reactive basis. I would presume it's not something we want to, because the level of enforcement that would be required to address every single violation would be significant. So likely it would be better enforced on a reactive basis. So if we did move forward on passing a bylaw and there wasn't significant complaints, it's not going to harm anything, because we're not going to be going out of our way looking to deal with it. So that being said, option 3 is attractive to me as well. So because considering our partners have so many municipalities have not made a decision yet, it's really hard to be consistent. And especially a lot of our visitors are coming from the south, and you could pass 6 different municipalities on the way, 6 different bylaws. So it is important to me, I think, to be consistent if we can, but I understand our municipality is different than our neighbors. So I would suggest personally option 2, but I'm definitely not opposed to option 3.
Anybody else?
I was just gonna say, can we do 2 and 3? I mean, we could put it in place and evaluate it as we go and review it at the end of the summer. And the cannabis is a new thing. We'll find out if it's an issue and a problem, and go from there.
Sorry.
Councillor Foster?
And I guess my only comment on that is, we don't have to necessarily wait till the end of the summer. If we're sitting there and put it out to, to bylaw and to the public to say, look, if you have a concern, let us know. We could do this in July. Like, I mean, we don't need to necessarily wait an entire year on this, to do it. I think once the statistics are significant, then we can impose it. But anyway.
Councillor Kenny?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I support option 2 with the concept that, there's no reason why we can't collect data along the way, and it doesn't mean it's going to be used. It gives our bylaw people another tool that allows them to react to concerns that the public would have. So, option 2.
Jeff?
One comment, thank you, Mr. Chair. Councillor Kenny, I agree, that's a really valid point. Specifically because it's better to have the tool than not if it was to become an issue. So I'd rather be able to address an issue if there was one, as opposed to having to refer it and say, unfortunately, I can't help you. Call a tobacco enforcement unit, and I don't know the response time for that. So, yeah.
Deputy Mayor Bragg?
Yeah, just one of the cons for option 2 was cost. So there was potentially increased workload, increased training, and now we want you to collect data. So again, there's a cost for that. Has this been allowed for in our 2019 budget?
Mr. Chair, there hasn't been anything set aside specifically for this project, for this budget season.
So then at this point, if we choose option 2, should we acknowledge that there will be a cost and we should make allowance for those funds, I guess, to the CAO?
Well, Jeff, do you want to clarify? Because I think you were saying that this was going to be more reactive as opposed to a proactive enforcement, at least initially.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. The costs would more or less be associated to increased signage because the province has their mandated signage they would have to impose, but I think it would be ideal to include our own signage that was more specific to cannabis. And a lot of the costing is to be determined. It's hard to determine what costing is going to be required because I haven't spoken. I don't know what trainings involved to continue enforcement here. There isn't any training brought forward yet, so it's going to be in-house and whatever we can find to better train our officers to be able to deal with cannabis. Considering it is going to be a statute that's very similar to the Liquor License Act. So the Liquor License Act is usually enforced by police. So it is an increased level of training that would be required for municipal officers. So that's something to consider, but there isn't really many examples yet, so we don't really know. A lot of the costs are to be determined, but the initial startup, I would say, is signage would be the given one for sure.
Deputy Mayor Bragg?
Then for me, if we're trailblazing, I don't think that this is the issue that we want to be on record for being the tough, no, you can't smoke in Wasaga Beach. I think there's so many things going on in our town that to be advertising, nope, you can't smoke here, you can't vape here, you can't, might not be the message that we want to put out while we're building tourism. So I still stand by option 3.
Okay, is there any further comments? Did you want to make any final comment, Jeff? Or?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The only other comment I would say is no matter what decision is made, an evaluation period is going to take place regardless. So if we decide to move forward on a bylaw, we'll still be evaluating the need of it. If we decide not to, we'll still evaluate the need. We're going to have a lot of feedback from our visitors and our residents. So I mean, the longer we wait, the more data we're going to have, and the more influence we can have from visitors and residents. So I think it is important to make a methodical decision on it. And if we can have data, that's great. But it's also the time of the year where if we don't want to, if it becomes a big issue, we don't want to go summer season without one. So.
Okay, so if I'm taking everything into account, I'll make a suggestion. I think we should vote on option 3, a show of hands, and and then we can look at a combination of 2 and 3. I don't think any other options were really supported broadly, so. Everyone okay with that? Okay, so first of all, if we can have a show of hands for option 3 on its own. That's carried. Yes. Read it again.
So your chair, you're not asking about 2 and 3 combined?
Because number 3 carried.
Okay.
That was just if it didn't carry. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, the clerk looks like she has a comment.
Yes.
Sorry.
I was just asking, Mr. Chair, if we would perhaps the mover and seconder were if we're changing.
Oh, we're supporting that?
We should ask them prior to.
Okay, thank you. So, so the mover was Councillor Wells, and the seconder was Councillor Kenny. So, are you able to support that?
No, I'll withdraw my motion. If you're moving with 3, I'll withdraw my motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll have to do the same.
Okay. So, do we just ask for a new seconder or a new motion?
I would say so.
Second.
Yeah, would anyone like to move this motion? Okay, so Deputy Mayor Bray and a seconder, Mr. Foster. So moved by Councillor Bray and seconded by Councillor Foster, resolved that the Community Service Section of Coordinated Committee does recommend to Council that it receive the staff report of the Acting Senior Municipal Law Enforcement Officer on the options to amend the Smoking in Public Places bylaw, and that the Community Service Section of Coordinated Committee does recommend that Council consider one of the following 4 options to impose further restrictions on smoking, vaping, cannabis, and or tobacco. And option 3, evaluate the need to impose restrictions throughout 2019. Do I need to read all of them or just the one that we chose? I just read the one option.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. And that the Community Service Section of Coordinated Committee recommend that Council approve option 3 as follows.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Mayor Byfolchi?
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Bray?
In favor?
Councillor Foster?
In favor.
Councillor Kinney?
Not in favor.
Councillor Watson?
In favor.
Councillor Wells?
Opposed.
Chair Belanger?
In favor.
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 5 in favor and 2 opposed.
Okay, the next item is 3.5.8, parking space to facilitate special events in Playland Park Square. That was pulled by myself, and I thought the recommendation was solid. The only thing that I wanted to bring forward is that maybe we need to have a little stronger wording related to if any events were to be added. Like we know the motorcycle rally, which had a number of days involved, may not move forward, and so we may be adding other events. I just don't want to have a situation where we have a party wants a renegotiation because we've added a couple events. I think that we should have some strong wordage in there that this is inclusive of all of the events that the town would conduct through the summer. Yes.
Separate to that was, and I'm looking to the CAO because I know in the past we've discussed this, and I think the easement issue needs to be dealt with, and it can be by having improvements, I believe, to the access from that parking lot onto Leach Drive. And that's something that I think we need to do that then we're not dealing with this every year. And I don't know if that can be done before the summer season, but we've discussed it in years past, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We certainly, from a staff perspective, and Public Works has looked into the cost of the installation of this apparatus, and the easement is there. It's a matter of right, and we'd have to negotiate that transfer of the easement rights back to the town and probably exchange for the construction of this entrance. From the staff perspective, the concern has been about the nature of the entrance and how permanent is this entrance given the proposed redevelopment of the beachfront, and it was spending this money, and it may be just a temporary fix, and that's always been the dilemma. At some point in time, the easement is going to have to be dealt with. It's just one of those matters that's a legacy matter that's dated back many years, and potentially could be an encumbrance for the future development of the Playland parking lot because it crosses Playland parking lot. So I would take direction from committee in terms of how committee would like to proceed. Those are essentially the issues.
And to that point, and I'll look to the clerk, I don't know if we need a motion to do that. If this stays the way it is for this year, that's fine, but I do believe that we need to start that process and we need to get that dealt with, because it will be an issue down the road. So. Oh.
Yes, Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to your comment, I agree. I think, you know, we can ask that of the person who owns the parking lot, but you know, to modify the thing without, I don't know if staff have communicated with them at the possibility of that, right? Like if all of a sudden there's another 12 days we need, we should talk to him before there's a resolution that says he will give it to us. You know, something about negotiating there. But I agree. I have no problem with that. And I just want to make sure that we're not end running a private property owner.
Yeah. So my concern was, you know, sometimes when you add days, it's much different than when you're reducing days. And what, if you want to speak to that, what your feeling is, or how quickly we can resolve that. Or.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So when we met with the owner of the property, we did discuss the case that if any additional events came forward. At this time, I don't have any applications in my hand for events that happen in Playland lot. But the motorcycle rally is currently not happening. It may or may not come forward again from a different organizer, but at this point in time, I think that gives us a 5-day leeway. There's also some talk about the farmers market, which I've also included 2 days in there for, that they may be looking at changing locations and a report to come forward to committee next month, I believe. So there is some leeway, I think, with the way that we have it right now. The big thing was that in the past, we've always done it per weekend. So when we're using Playland lot for these specific days for this event, he moved over to Spruce Street lot for those specific days. This gives us a full block of time, which is easier for our staff for setup and takedown of the parking lot, and also more of a consistent feel for the public to know that during these times it's privately run, and after that it'd be town run. So, you know, some of the events that happen after, we could definitely add a date. I think we can add days on to the end of this, but I would just be cautious because we don't want to overdo the days that we're giving based on the 5 days that we actually have right now, 5 additional days. If that makes any sense.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, further to what Ann just said, and I think she would agree that having sat through that negotiation discussion, the owner would be more than agreeable to add days if need be, and I think moving out towards that long weekend in July would be to his benefit. So if we were to extend the period because of new events that came along, I suspect that it would be favorable, although further to Councillor Foster's comment, it would be a secondary negotiation that's well pointed, but probably not overly complex considering all the work that goes into planning another event, perhaps.
So if I don't know where we're at, do we want to add anything to the motion that at least we would attempt to do that? Or is or is this a case of referring back to staff?
Mr. Chair, what would you suggest in terms of wording that if events do come up, that the staff be authorized to negotiate additional days or with the owner?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Like to your point, we have 5 days now, so that potentially could be a couple of events that could be added, and maybe there's no need beyond that. But you know, how these sometimes happen is that when you add days, that there's an expectation for the town to do more, and they forget about the days that never happened. You know, so I just felt the wordage. So in principle, I certainly support what you're suggesting. I just want to make sure that sticks.
Also, through you, Mr. Chair, the other option is for any events that come forward in the future, I can also make that recommendation in the staff report for that event approval, that we negotiate the further timelines if the event is taking place in Playland.
I'm okay with that option if everyone else is. Okay, so we'll just go with the original motion then. So moved by Councillor Kenny and second by Councillor Wells, resolved that the Community Service Section of Coordinating Committee recommends to Council to approve an agreement with Nick Minanoski to repay the Block 10 Main Street parking spaces during special events for town parking spaces at the south end of the Spruce Street parking lot, a set seasonal period commencing on June 28th and concluding on July 22nd, 2019.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Mayor White-Fulton?
In favor.
Deputy Mayor Bray?
In favor.
Councillor Foster?
In favor.
Councillor Kinney?
In favor.
Councillor Watson? In favor. Councillor Wells?
In favor.
Chair Belanger?
In favor.
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
And the final item pulled from Community Service Section is 3.7.5 OPP Policing Fourth Quarter 2018 Wasaga Beach Statistics. And that was by Councillor Kenny.
Through you, Chair, to George. I'm just wondering whether or not we could approach our detachment commander and see whether or not he'd be open to adding, just besides the bare stats, information that would encapsulate, for example, I know we still have over there a mental health response unit. That unit, yes, he could articulate that their charges and actions might be in those stats, but they do more than enforce. They help, they counsel, they do our people in our community to the right resources. And I was wondering whether or not we could approach our detachment commander to add those kind of stats so we get a better picture of what they're doing in our community.
Any additional comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the councillor. I believe that's feasible, certainly from the standpoint in terms of the town making that request to the detachment commander. And if committee is interested, certainly that could be added to the motion. And I'd be happy to prepare some wording for committee's consideration.
Yeah, I would say a great suggestion. That's certainly a growing demand within our policing community, so that's good. So do you want to add that, George?
Hey, Mr. Chair, I'm just writing it down, so perhaps the councillor could repeat specifically the information so I can include it in the motion.
Well, approach the detachment commander with regards to adding information in regards to stats on the mental health response team.
Chair, so I've prepared this wording on the basis of what the councillor has indicated. Perhaps I could read it out and see if it captures what the councillor was intending. And further, that the detachment commander be asked to provide information in regards to statistics from the mental health response team.
Yes.
If I may, just as part of the quarterly report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
You want me to read the first section and you can reread that? Okay, so moved by Councillor Watson and seconded by Councillor Foster. Resolved that the Community Service Section of Coordinating Committee recommend to Council that it receive the fourth quarter 2018 OPP Policing Statistical Report for information, and
further, that the detachment commander provide information in regards to statistics from the mental health response team as part of the quarterly statistical report. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Mayor Byfolchi.
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Bray.
In favor?
Councillor Foster.
In favor.
Councillor Kinney.
In favor.
Councillor Watson.
In favor.
Councillor Wells.
In favor.
And Chair Belanger.
in favor?
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
We're adjourned. So do you, how much time do people need? Do we want to go to 1:45 or do you want to go to 10:02?
Quarter to.
Okay, so we're adjourned for about 8 minutes.
good. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we'll call this coordinated committee meeting back to order. We're going to deal with the public works section. I will apologize to council and public for my voice from time to time, but bear with me. I will try and get through this. And the more you guys want to talk, the less I have to. So this morning we have no deputations, presentations, petitions, and public meetings. Oh yeah, I should also remind you, if you have a conflict of interest at any point during this section, you should declare it. There's no unfinished business at this moment. There's no other agency reports on the agenda. We do have the consent agenda here. One item has been pulled. For the record, it's 4.5.12 under the departmental staff reports. This is the 2018 annual performance report of the Water Pollution Control Plant. So the consent agenda is moved by, so that item will not be in the consent agenda, I'm sorry. The consent agenda is moved by Deputy Mayor Bray and seconded by Her Worship. And that's resolved that the Public Works section of the Coordinated Committee hereby receives the March 14th, 2019 consent agenda items 4.4.1 through 4.7.4, and that all the recommendations contained therein be adopted as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Boulanger?
In favor.
Mayor Byfolchi?
In favor.
Deputy Mayor Bray?
In favor.
Councillor Kinney?
In favor.
Councillor Watson?
In favor.
Councillor Wells?
In favor.
And Chair Foster?
In favor.
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Thank you. This item 4.5.1 and 2 that's been pulled by Councillor Boulanger. I will note that our Director of Public Works is not here today, so in the hot seat, Gerald Ryu will be there if needed. Councillor Boulanger?
Yes, I pulled this for two reasons. First of all, you know, a lot of communities take the quality of their water for granted, and on the coordinated committee agenda is quite a number of reports that details the extent of which this community goes to ensure that our water system is fantastic, and that we score unbelievably well and have consistently. And I think that's important to give credit to our public works and their third parties that assist in that. The one area which is fairly minor, that, and this is why I specifically pulled this report, is that there have been to council a number of times about some odor issues, and I was going to give Kevin the opportunity just to talk about some of the things that they've done to mitigate that, because there has been a lot done. It was discussed at a previous meeting not that long ago, so if Gerald's not prepared to talk to it, I would just let our residents know that that we do extremely well with our water, and the minor problems that have been identified have been addressed, you know, conscientiously, I'll say.
Okay. And okay.
And we've got the
How are you doing?
Richard Eagle with Ontario Clean Water.
Yep.
So we've done some work with the odors. We met with the ministry back April 2018 and put together a plan. The focus was, what could we do operationally to try to mitigate these odors? So we put together a plan. That plan was agreed upon with the ministry, and we actually presented that April 12th, 2018 here at the Coordinated Committee. So we've implemented phase 1 into phase 2 of that plan. So those are operational changes. So optimizing the biosolids, trying to thicken the waste. One thing we experience is capacity. So the waste sludge is, if it's too thin, it doesn't give us an opportunity to thicken it, and we have to shut the air off to supernate. So we've used part of the process, the clarifiers, to thicken the sludge. And so from March 2018 up until January, we received 0 complaints from the residents around the sewage plant. There were some, I believe Station 2 and Station 3, a couple complaints. It was in the annual report, and some on Knox Road. So to the best of our knowledge, that the program was working well. We did have some conversations with residents in the ministry following the January odor incident, and it kind of came to light that they were still detecting some odors on Fridays. So in February, we switched our biosolids management plan once again, and the concept there is that we're aerating that sludge 6 days a week. So previously, the one tank wasn't receiving air between Mondays and Fridays because we were using it as a thickener. But now we're using the 2 tanks aerobically. So far, we haven't received any complaints. A week ago, we installed an odor logger in a central location around that complex. So it's what that allows us to do. It's a hydrogen sulfide odor detector. So what that allows us to do is not rely solely on complaints. We can. I pulled the data off yesterday, and a week's worth of data, there's 0 hydrogen sulfide in that area. So we're hoping that'll be a more proactive approach rather than, again, just relying on residents complaining. We can actually look at the data from that specific site and then communicate that to everybody.
Okay, just through the chair, the main reason for pulling the item is because you're doing a great job, and congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, I agree. They're very proactive. Always have been proactive, whether it's water, wastewater, snow removal, etc. It's very, very proactive work. Is there anything else around the table related to that item? Seeing none, I will read the question. It's moved by Councillor Watson, seconded by Councillor Bray. Resolve the Public Works section of the Coordinated Committee does hereby. Did I call you Councillor Bray? Sorry. It's moved by Councillor Watson and seconded by Deputy Mayor Bray. My apologies. Resolved that Public Works section of the Coordinated Committee does hereby receive the 2018 Annual Performance Report for the Water Pollution Control Plant for information.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Belanger?
In favor?
Mayor Bartolci?
In favor.
Deputy Mayor Bray?
In favor.
Councillor Taylor?
In favor.
Councillor Watson?
In favor.
Councillor Wells?
In favor.
And Chair Foster?
In favor.
Thank you. Motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Thank you very much. We'll just run through the rest of this. I don't think there was anything else on this. Yes.
Just a comment when it's appropriate, Mr. Chair. I read this week the reintroduction of the infrastructure grants for starting out with roads, bridges, and then a second phase for transit.
Yes.
And I'm just looking at the CAO for confirmation that I'm assuming that we will be making applications for funding through those grant programs for perhaps the continuation of the works on River Road West to Blueberry Trail, and or some of the work from 45th Street to Beechwood Road. The bridge, of course, the Main Street Bridge, which is a significant cost. So I'm just assuming that we'll be pumping as many grant applications in there as we possibly can to support those projects. And I guess the transit one, I'm hoping that depending on the criteria that's involved, that we'd be pushing grants to perhaps expand our transit system routes to include some of the less serviced areas, particularly the sports park area, that we would be looking for grants to be able to expand our transit system accordingly to take in those areas of the town. So just an observation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, no worries. Anyone else? No indulgence here? No? Okay. Actually, sorry, I will ask a little leniency from committee here.
No.
Okay. In the check register, and I don't have it in front of me right now, but there was an item on the Emerald Ash Borer beetle program. and since Gerald's here and Kevin isn't, there was original process last year that got rid of a bunch of them. As we all know, there's been a ton more that have been taken down at places like the Oakview Woods, etc. How far along is that in that program, if I may? Sorry.
Through the chair there, they are pretty much wrapped up phase one. There's a little bit of stump grinding to do. The stuff at Oakview was actually cut down by the MNR. That's their property, so they cut it down. So they're winding up quite nicely. So we're sort of got to get out there for the second phase and re-tender and get around with the bid there. But they're
phase one of how many?
I'm going to say there's pretty close to 1,200 trees that were cut down. There's 3,000 to come down. They're about half.
Okay, thank you. Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Obviously, we're going forward with more. There's a lot of, what's the word, confusion out in the marketplace or with the citizenry about what's happening. They just see trees coming down. I'm not sure what notices we put out, but the more, the better, I would think, just letting people know why this is actually happening.
Yes.
So that's just my suggestion, if we could, so that it's well mentioned, everyone, that there's a purpose for this and we're just not taking down trees indiscriminately.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. If there's nothing else, we'll call this section of the coordinated committee into recess for, we only need a couple minutes, right? We'll go at 10 o'clock on the nose. Thank you.
call the coordinated committee back to order with the development services section, starting with a consent agenda. So, moved by Councillor Kinney, seconded by Councillor Belanger. Resolved that development services section of the coordinated committee hereby receives the March 14, 2019 consent agenda, items 5.1 through to 5.7, that all the recommendations contained therein be adopted as amended. The amendments are for 3 items that have been pulled. Section 5.5.1, zoning bylaw amendment. Section 5.5.3, economic development report. And 5.5.4, community improvement plan. Is there anything else anyone would like to pull? Seeing none, the motion has been read.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Belanger?
In favor.
Mayor Byfolchi?
In favor.
Councillor Foster?
In favor.
Councillor Kinney?
In favor.
Councillor Watson?
In favor.
Councillor Wells?
In favor.
Chair Bray?
In favor.
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Thank you. The first item to be pulled was the zoning bylaw amendment, and this was pulled by Councillor Belanger.
Yes, just reading through that, thank you, Chair. I wondered if we could get maybe a little more of an explanation. It kept referring to minor housekeeping amendments and that type of thing, but I wasn't getting a good understanding exactly the changes we were making and the implication of the change, you know, across the entire community or specific areas. Or,
Sure, through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Belanger. The proposed changes are quite technical in nature. They're basically looking at amending the definition of public use and to clarify specifically what a definition of public services would be within that use. There is some language in there that may be subject to interpretation, so we just want to provide certainty about what public uses are, what public services are as well, and that they generally would be any use that the town or other public authorities would provide in the community. The other piece would be to amend the general provisions that apply to public uses, so that there's certainty in there as well that clarifies generally that the intention of the bylaw is that public uses are permitted throughout the town and in most of the zones. So we want to be more explicit about that and amend the language that way. We haven't specifically written what that language is yet, so we'll do that over the next short while before we advertise for a public meeting, if that's the desire of council.
So, through the chair, so is the areas of the town exempt now from public service uses? If there's, like when you indicated that there has to be more clarification as to where they can be, is there, so what precipitated the change? Is there a...
I think it was the uncertainty about what the definition is particularly. There was some clarity that is needed around what public uses are, and specifically public services, and what that means in the bylaw is not clear. So we'd want to provide some clarity for that. But in terms of locations, generally most of the zones in town permit public uses as of right, but we want to be clear that they apply on a town-wide basis. So any zones that perhaps don't permit it now would also permit it.
Okay, but specifically, is there zones that don't permit it now that will be opened up? Rather than put you on the spot now, through the chair, if this is coming back to council, could we make sure that the changes of what it was and what it now is you know, identified, so that we have a good understanding of that?
Absolutely, yeah, we can do that through the following process.
Okay.
That's right, because the process does include a public meeting where I imagine there will be a good explanation of what it is that this...
Yes.
Okay. That's right. Any more questions? Seeing none. It is moved by Councillor Wells, seconded by Councillor Kinney. Resolved that Coordinated Committee of Council recommend to Council to authorize staff to begin a town-initiated zoning bylaw amendment to clarify the definition and location of public uses in the zoning bylaw, and to authorize staff to advertise and hold a public meeting at coordinated committee of council.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Belanger.
In favor?
Mayor Byfolchi.
In favor?
Councillor Foster.
In favor.
Councillor Kinney.
In favor.
Councillor Watson.
In favor?
Councillor Wells.
In favor.
Chair Bray.
In favor.
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item to be pulled was 5.5.3, economic development. And this one was pulled by Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I went looking for it again this morning. I made this note a couple days ago, but maybe Ellen can speak to it. There was a reference to having an ambassador for the town, or a town-wide ambassador to promote the town, and I was wondering if this might be the opportunity to look into a town crier again. We've been without one for many years now, since Roy Wilson did that, and I thought that was a very good thing we had for the town. He promoted the town, attended different events. In fact, he invited town crier competition to Wasaga Beach. So I just wondered if that would be an opportunity to do that, to fill that function. As I said, I couldn't find the exact thing this morning in there, but it was in the terms of reference or somewhere. So I'm just throwing it out for consideration at some point. He passed away 7, 8 years ago now, but it was a very nice addition to the municipality.
Just an update, Councillor Wells, during the last term of council, our executive assistant brought forward that very suggestion, and I know it went to a public request. I'm not sure where it went from there, but there certainly was a call out for town criers. So it might be worth following up internally just to see where, unless you have an update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, I do not have an update, but I know that funds have been placed in the budget for 2019 in anticipation of there being a town crier, so we have the funds there. I'll do some research to see where things lie, and if it's certainly council's interest in pursuing that, depending on the results of that first try, we could certainly try again. But the funds are there, and there's certainly the interest in pursuing it.
Councillor Belanger?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just further to that, and I support that idea, but I believe the spouse of the ex-town crier had made it known that she would donate the uniforms to the town that could be altered, and in any event, I think that was mentioned previously, but there was no follow-up to that, and I believe from what I've heard that she would prefer to have that followed up sooner than later if the town has an interest.
Leave that with you too?
Yes, Madam Chair. Yes.
Wonderful. Any more questions or comments? Seeing none, it's moved by Councillor Belanger, seconded by Councillor Kinney. Resolved that the Development Services Section Coordinated Committee recommend to Council that the Economic Development and Tourism staff begin to address 7 recommendations from the Tourism Destination Management Plan. And further, the Coordinated Committee recommends to Council to appoint an Advisory Committee on Tourism. And further, that Council directs staff to circulate the attached terms of reference for the Advisory Committee on Tourism to the appropriate staff and legal counsel for review. Seeing no more comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Belanger.
In favor?
Mayor Byfolchi.
In favor?
Councillor Foster.
In favor.
Councillor Kinney.
In favor.
Councillor Watson.
In favor?
Councillor Wells.
In favor.
Chair Bray.
In favor.
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor and
Thank
0
you. That was an easy one for Ellen.
It was easy.
Madam
Thank
Chair,
you.
now that the
Wells?
motion is passed, I would just like to make a comment that I hope and trust that as we form the advisory committee, that we look to the entire town for people, seek out people from right across the entire town to sit as the members of that committee, because I'm not sure that sometimes we tend to perceive tourism-related interests as being limited to somebody who has a burger shop or a motel or something of that nature. And in fact, there are many other businesses in the community that are tourism-based. You know, I can use an example, even, you know, for example, even Castle Building Supply has a tourism-based interest because much of their business is they're maybe not necessarily defined as tourists, but they are summer residents who are here only in the summer months. And I classify them as tourism based, coming into town for the summer to stay at their cottage or have their families come. So I want to be assured that the composition of this committee is going to be very broad in terms of its expanse and also in terms of its representation of the entire business community across the town, not just those that might normally be deemed to be strictly tourism. That's my comment.
Through you, Madam Chair, it will ultimately be council's appointment, and all of those things that you're suggesting will be taken into consideration, and absolutely.
Councillor Kinney, did you have a comment?
Just really quick, Madam Chair. Further to Councillor Wells' comment, I've seen, and it's a common practice in some cases, just to go on last year's outreach data contact list, and I've seen it happen once or twice where from previous administration, that council, that time the contact list was a certain way, which isn't neither here nor there. But I think each time we look at reaching out to people, that contact list should be added to as we expand this.
Through you, Madam Chair, we have identified that we really don't have a very up-to-date comprehensive list of all the businesses in Wasaga Beach. I have a student starting soon, and that's going to be one of his project, data mining, and you know, take some hunting even out on the off-site, looking for businesses, up-to-date information, ownership, all of those things, so that we can really understand what our economic development and our business community is made of, and the different sectors. To your point.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, thanks, Alan.
Thank you.
Moving on, 5.5.4, Community Improvement Planning. This one was pulled by Councillor Wells and Councillor Belanger. I'm not sure who would like to speak first.
Mine's pretty straightforward.
Okay.
I read the report a couple of times, and it is certainly comprehensive. You give away with words, Nathan. But I guess as the lay person, and Nathan is aware of what I'm going to ask, I show my age a little bit. I asked Nathan if he could provide the Coles Notes version of, first of all, what is in the report, and secondly, the Coles Notes version of what it is he is asking me, and through an extension to the rest of this table, what he is asking us to give him back. And I'll leave it at that.
Sure. Through you, Madam Chair. So I'll give a brief synopsis of the report and then kind of talk about the ask. Essentially, Council gave us direction to look at expanding or thinking about CIP programs or incentives that could be offered to areas of the whole town through a workshop that we had on January 31st with Committee of the Whole. So this report is a follow-up to that. Currently, the town has 3 community improvement planning areas identified in the official plan. That's one of the prerequisites to do community improvement planning, is that your official plan identifies those areas and what the goals are for those areas. So right now, our Main Street beachfront downtown area is one, and that's the only area of town where we actually have a CIP in place. Another area is the Mosley Village area, which is one of our nodes in the community, and it's an area that the town has had some policies to encourage residential intensification over time.
And the third area is our west end of town, and it's called a community improvement project area, and it sort of looks at the need for further study of that area to really determine what the true needs are, but it is identified as an area. So that's the long story of what we have now. In order to look at broader town-wide community improvement planning, we do need to amend our official plan first. So our plan was to do that through our official plan update that we're working on now, and we plan to have that completed by next spring. So that would have included a community improvement planning, strategy and areas of the community that we would want to provide some incentives for. We've identified two different sort of streams of that in the report. One would be a town-wide community improvement plan for affordable housing, and there's a number of ways that we can approach that. There's supporting new redevelopment for affordability that would require affordability over time. There are ways in which we can support second units, for example, like the county does, to maybe supplement their second unit program. So there's a number of ways I think that we can discuss over time to support affordability in our community, and those are rental opportunities. But we can also look at potentially supporting affordable home ownership. The province has been looking at programs like inclusionary zoning, so that's something we should have a look at as well. It's not in place yet officially, but we can certainly look at that as an option. The other stream is for specific forms of development in our nodes and our corridors, and I think that's what Council was referring to generally when we spoke back in January, is providing some other incentives for the other nodes in the communities that we're looking to encourage revitalization and intensification and potentially mixed use type of development. So both of those options do need to be updated in our official plan. We were intending to do that through the update. Preparing plans to do that will have some time and costs associated with them. There is the option to kind of fast track those and work on town-initiated official plan amendments to do that work in advance of our official plan process. So we can go back and think about that and put that together in a work plan for you. And that's kind of the goal of this report, is to get some initial direction to seek direction to do some further work on both of those different streams, and report back on what the costs would be, and also probably have a more detailed conversation about what the goals of those CIPs would be. For example, on the nodes and corridors stream, we're still talking to the community about what type of development we foresee happening in each of those nodes. So until we really kind of nail that down through our official plan, it'll be a challenge to try to provide incentives for those. So what we would suggest potentially, and this is kind of leading into the next stage, the work plan stage, but we can come up with a scenario where we work on a CIP in tandem with the official plan as we're preparing it, so that they both kind of are approved around the same time, and then can continue on. The work plan would work in conjunction with each other, so the end date approval of both could be the same, and then the CIP would be in effect once that official plan gets approved. So that's one option, just sort of looking to the future. So the ask, again, is just really to get some initial direction for us to go back and do some more work around what those CIP programs could look like, and have some further conversations at this table with Council.
The timeline for the official plan rollout is tentatively. What's the official plan? What's the timeline? Tentatively, when do you see it as reaching that stage of completion and ready for rollout?
Through your Madam Chair, our goal is to have it done by Q2 of next year. So that's about a year's time frame. There's still quite a bit of work to do on the official plan. So we've been structuring our department so that my primary role would be to be able to achieve that. So that's our intention right now.
And I appreciate that. And I only asked the question, Madam Chair, because I just would like to highlight, for myself at least, what I believe to be the importance of that community improvement planning options for development going forward. And I just did not want to see, if it's tied to the official plan, Q2 of 2020 isn't all that bad, but if there was some way by an amendment to have that in place sooner, that would be my preference. That's my comment.
Councillor Boulanger, did you still have, were your questions answered? Or?
Well, yeah, well, I did not support the original motion, and my understanding of a CIP is that it really should have a very focused approach to identify priorities, to have an all across town approach across all kinds of different types of development. To me, it's not the purpose of a CIP in the first place, but we have situations here through the processes we've already been through. Like, for instance, big box commercial. We know we're already oversaturated for our size of community. So if in the West End you were to create an incentive for that type of commercial, we would be incentivizing growth at the detriment of already existing business that have been active in supporting our community for a long time. Affordable housing, again, I think we talk a lot about not wanting to disrupt traditional neighborhoods and that type of thing. So again, the idea of a CIP is to be very focused and to have a priority. We have a situation in our town where visitation is not meeting expectation, and maybe even growth could be improved, although our real estate values, I think, have given us good growth, but we don't have a sense of place in our community. There's not enough mass of development in any one area where we have people that say, gee, I want to go there and I want to spend time there. It doesn't happen. Matter of fact, if I had $1 for every time anyone ever said, let's go to Wasaga Beach and shop for the day, I wouldn't be able to buy a cup of coffee. And the idea of a CIP is to change that, to move us towards a complete community with a very focused approach on priorities. And I believe that it opens us up even to misuse taxpayers' dollars. Because as soon as you open it up, then you're going to get requests for incentives, and ultimately the taxpayer funds that. So I just believe we really need to look hard at this, and there has to be for every area a specific requirement as to why we would want to do a CIP. So what form of development? Is it affordable housing? Is it commercial? It can't be everything for everybody across the entire town. It defeats the whole purpose of planning.
Any more comments or questions? Seeing none, I will read the motion.
Deputy Mayor.
I'm sorry, Councillor Watson.
Thank you. Thank you through you to Nathan. I'm looking at your first map here where it identifies 3 zones. Am I assuming that's our current official plan? It shows the Main Street area, it shows the Mosley Village, and then the far west end, the yellow area. So that's currently in our bylaw, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. That's in our official plan. Yeah.
Okay, so we have the 3, and I know we've been talking further, so I guess my first question would be, when this was developed, why would the CIPs not be allocated to these other 2 identified plans, and why everything is focused on that purple area? as we go through, I'm assuming you're looking to add the 45th Street node and the one around the bridge, McDonald's, Tim Hortons. Is that correct? There's two more areas going forward.
Through you, Madam Chair, that could be part of the one stream where if we decide to provide incentives for residential intensification or mixed-use development within our nodes, then we may wish to add those two areas to our official plan schedule. That's correct.
Yeah, I'm seeing them identified on the review thing here with circles around 45th bridge and that, so go forward with that. And I also noticed there was a comment, I was a little unsure of, you're talking about a Mosley Street corridor, and it appears you're saying from Sunnydale Road all the way along Mosley, making a left at the bridge and continuing along Mosley right back to 6th Street as one corridor. That's how I'm reading it here.
Through you, Madam Chair, that's referring to some further planning and design work that we are suggesting would follow the official plan to do more urban design specific work and further identify uses and design and streetscape that would be ideal or be the desirable condition for that corridor at a later date. That wouldn't be part of the community improvement planning work plan that we would move forward at this time. That's a future step in our evolution of our community. So the Mosley Street corridor that we could look at as a group to provide incentives for would focus on the Schoonertown node, which goes from approximately 24th or 5th Street over to the end of the majority of the commercial development on Mosley, which I think is probably 33rd or so, and then the corridor that's existing in that area that travels further west to Sunnydale is kind of an area of transition that has a number of plazas as well as single detached dwellings, that some of which are used for businesses, some of which are used as residences. So that area we would look at in the official plan, in the current official plan review, as an area of transition, and what do we see that corridor looking like in the future.
So that's down the road sort of thing.
Yes.
Okay. And supplemental. Just reading about community improvement plans here, and specifically the City of Barrie, but they refer to as not a plan, but plans that provide financial incentives to achieve current community goals and priorities and targets, key planning and strategic objectives for development within Barrie's built boundary. So based on that definition, we have a built boundary, and I do not think CIPs or anything restricts us to looking at one specific defined area. We have a large 16 kilometers or 20 kilometers of length in this town, and I think we need to look at all areas to help enhance those areas and not concentrate on one. And I think that just strikes it in the City of Barrie. They're looking at different nodes that they would also do those CIPs with. So I'd be fully supportive of looking at the town as a whole, as Councillor Wells.
Just a further comment is Barrie has a very significant and well-established downtown currently. It's a little different situation than what we have here in Wasaga Beach.
Okay, seeing no more comments, I will read the motion. Moved by Councillor Wells, seconded by Councillor Kinney, that coordinated committee of council recommend to council that direct staff to report back with a work plan inclusive of costs to implement the following community improvement incentives in the identified community improvement areas and nodes and corridors: residential mixed-use development incentive program, development charge rebate, tax increment equivalent grant (TIEG) program, planning and development fee rebates, exemption reduction from parking ratio requirements. And further, that committee recommend to council that it directs staff to report back with a work plan inclusive of cost to implement the following community improvement incentive town program, affordable housing. And further, that staff be requested to report back with the specific policy amendments to the official plan that would be required to implement the recommended incentives. Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Belanger.
Opposed?
Mayor Byfolchi.
In favor.
Councillor Foster.
In favor.
Councillor Kinney.
In favor.
Councillor Watson.
In favor?
Councillor Wells.
In favor.
Chair Bray.
In favor.
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 6 in favor and 1 opposed.
Thank you. The meeting will now recess till 10:45, 10:45, at which time we will convene with general government. Thank you. These ones have in our, that's the consent, or that's the presentation.
Yeah, I signed that.
Yes, you did.
We should have to double check that stuff.
Hey,
Dina, you live recording?
But Dawn.
general section. Just a reminder that if anybody at any time feels they have a pecuniary conflict of interest, that they announce it at that time. Under deputations, presentations, petitions, and public meetings, we have one today. Les and Maria Wilcox requesting relief from development charges. So Les, Maria, if you'd like to come forward. Welcome.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you for being here, and just a reminder that we have a 10-minute timeline, and but you've already assured me that that's not an issue, so please feel free to address us as you see fit.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair, thank you, Council. So I did submit a letter. I probably would read through that, and if there were questions coming from that, then please feel free to share them. So greetings to you from the newest addition to the Wasaga Beach family. We're thrilled to announce that we just purchased a small lot in Wasaga Beach earlier in February, and we're eager to meet the community and start our family along the special journey of making lifelong memories at Ontario's premier playground. Special thank you to Tracy Jarrett and the helpful team in planning and also in council that assisted us with the minor variance process to ensure that we would be allowed to build a modest structure on this cozy parcel of land, approximately 45 feet by 55 feet. Their guidance and support was really appreciated as we navigated our way through the various town departments to submit our application. Our next adventure will be the application for building permit, but allow us to take a moment to introduce ourselves and share with you our deep roots in Simcoe County and our love for the area. So we are Les and Maria Wilcox. We have 3 wonderful kids at home, 20-year-old son Nicholas, middle daughter Jasmine, 16, and a 10-year-old Janelle. I was born and raised on a farm near Bondhead and attended Bradford High. I'm the 5th generation on our farm, which the Wilcox family first bought in 1849 when they moved to Simcoe County from England. I still actively work on that farm and also work in Toronto part-time. Maria was born and raised in West Woombury, near Holland Marsh. She also attended Bradford High School, a bit of high school sweethearts. Her parents immigrated from Holland to Simcoe County in 1956 and built their family home 10 years later in '66. Maria has worked at the same employer in Bradford since high school. We married in 1991 and purchased a building lot in South Simcoe. Then Maria's dad helped us build our own home in 1993, where we still reside today. Our family works in Simcoe and plays in Simcoe, and now we'd like to cottage in Simcoe. It's on this topic they were asking for your consideration. In speaking with the town administration recently, we have learned that there had previously been a cottage on the lot that we purchased. In addition, we have learned that if a subsequent cottage is not erected on a property within a specific period of time, I think that's 5 years, then it will trigger an additional development charge. In speaking with the previous owners, they were unfamiliar with the stipulation, did not know that there was any deadline to rebuild. The town representative was able to find a demolition permit, I believe marked as March 2013, for the cottage that was removed on the property. We respectfully request your consideration for relief from the development charge that may be triggered on this property. We are eager to start construction during this coming season at the earliest that we can complete the building permit process. We're very willing to work together with the town to ensure that the vacancy period for this property is minimized to the best of our combined ability. The 2019 assessed value for this property, we just actually received our tax bill. I thought it was $7,500, it's actually $70,000 even. And the prospect of incurring a development charge totaling 40% or more of the assessed value of the entire property does seem a little bit punitive. Any assistance that you can offer to provide an exemption from new development charges being levied on the property would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Les. Do you have anything to add, Maria?
No, he words things quite well, so.
Good answer.
I'll leave it with him. Thank you.
Any comments or questions from council? George?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When that policy came into effect, I was never supportive of it for lots of record that have been in existence for many years. I'm totally in support of any new development, any newly created lots paying their full development charges, paying their way going forward. But lots that have been paying taxes for 30, 40, 50 years have already contributed to that development. So I would be in favor of doing something. I just don't know what, but as I said, I was never in favor of lots of records. They paid their way, essentially, in my opinion.
Mark?
Thank you, Chair, and to our new residents. Welcome.
Thank you.
That's all I want to say.
Oh, that was easy. Thank you. Mayor Baffolchi.
Thank you. I've built several times, so I know how painful those development charges are. I guess my question would be directed more towards staff as far as any precedent-setting situations where we've already looked at a situation like this, so I don't know if there's another opportunity to ask that or discuss that.
Well, I think the motion is going to ask to have it referred back to staff for report, so I think the CAO has heard that comment. That can be included in the report back from the staff.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll read the motion. That's moved by Councillor Kinney and seconded by Councillor Belanger. Resolved that the General Government Services section of Coordinated Committee received the deputation from Mr. and Mrs. Wilcox for information, and further that this item be referred back to staff for review and a report to come back at a future meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Belanger?
In favor?
Mayor Baffolchi?
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Bray?
In favor.
Councillor Foster?
In favor.
Councillor Kinney?
In favor.
Councillor Watson? In favor. And Chair Wells?
In favor.
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Okay. Thank you. Les, Marie, the staff will bring a report forward, and certainly if you have any questions along the route, don't hesitate to contact members of staff or directly through the CAO. Yes, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. May I just ask a question of our deputants with respect to just timing of when you were thinking of applying for a building permit, just to give me a sense of how urgent we need to bring this report back so you can have a decision by council.
Excellent. Mr.
Yes.
Chair, thank you. So we have been working with a local business, the surveyor in town, Rodney Reynolds, who has just completed last week a topographical survey for us, which allows us to pass information to a drainage engineer, another local that he's recommending, I think, in Waterville. So we are moving forward as quickly as we can with the steps came out of the minor variance process that we need to get a drainage plan completed as the final piece of that. So we are moving forward as quickly as we can. We would be interested in building in this coming season. So if we had information back by the next monthly council meeting, that sounds fantastic. If that's not a reasonable time frame, then I think we're interested in moving as quickly as the town is able to work with us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we have, it's basically a monthly cycle with the council meeting at the end of the month. So
Yes.
the end of March, end of April, end of May.
Yes.
Type thing. That's kind of the way the cycle works. So what would be ideal from your standpoint in terms of being ready to build?
So I'm not really positive how long the building permit process takes. I haven't had the luxury of building a few times in town. We're interested in building this summer. So if you say it's reasonable that we would hear back after a 1 month cycle for the town people to make a recommendation, and then the following month cycle a decision would be made at the meeting. We're really happy to work within your timelines, but we are interested in moving forward so as to not delay the period of time in which this property stays vacant.
Sorry, George, further?
I was just going to say then, Mr. Chair, based on that, we'll try to get it on the April cycle, which would mean the April committee meeting similar to this, and then to the council meeting. We'll try our best to do that, and we'll keep you informed along the way.
Mayor Baffolchi.
And I was just going to say we have a whole bunch of meetings in March, so if there is a possibility of adding it on to one when you're dealing with your timelines, you want to get in the ground as early in spring as possible so that you can at least have closed in for winter and all of those things. So I would like to see it, if we can get it here sooner, I would like to see it here sooner.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, moving to the consent agenda. I have items 6.5.2, the Deputy Clerk's report on integrated accessibility standards. That has been pulled by Councillor Kinney. I have the Communication Officer's report dated March 14th. Council's community outreach, that has also been pulled by Councillor Kinney. And I have the departmental accounts, section 6.6.1, departmental accounts, which has been pulled by Councillor Belanger. I'm not aware of any other than those three having been pulled. And so I will read the motion. Sorry, Councillor Watson.
I just want to make note that my conflict with the community grants program.
Yes. Yeah, just to formalize that, Councillor Watson has declared a conflict as it relates to the grants program and the Stainer Granite Curling Club, and he will vote on all other matters. So it is resolved that General.
Wells?
Sorry, Deputy Mayor.
Could we maybe pull the grant program as well? 6.5.4. You got new information delivered to table. So I just think we should maybe.
Okay, so this is a quick pull.
Well, she just requested.
Oh, I see. Okay, you're ready to go. Okay. All right. So we will pull the grants section as well, 6.5.4. Okay. See no other requests. I'll read the motion. Resolve the General Government Committee section of Coordinated Committee hereby receives the consent agenda item 6.4.7 and the recommendations contained therein be adopted as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Belanger.
In favor.
Mayor Byfolchi.
In favor.
Deputy Mayor Bray.
In favor.
Councillor Foster.
In favor.
Councillor Kinney.
In favor.
Councillor Watson.
In favor.
Chair Wells.
In favor.
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor and 0 opposed. Thank you.
Okay, so first item pulled was the Deputy Clerk's report, Reintegrated Accessibility Standards, and that was pulled by Councillor Kinney, so I'll give you the first opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Being the council rep on this committee, I just wanted to emphasize the importance to the town with regards to staying on top of accessibility issues, and that importance not only to our individuals that would be around that table, but also for the town as a whole.
Thank you. Any other comments? Thank you, Councillor Kinney. Then no other comments. Read the motion. Resolve the General Government's section of Coordinated Committee recommends to Council that it amend the Integrated Accessibility Standards, Planning Accessible Meetings and Events Policy. Comments? We'll take the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Belanger.
In favor.
Mayor Byfolchi.
In favor.
Deputy Mayor Bray.
In favor.
Councillor Foster.
In favor.
Councillor Kinney.
In favor.
Councillor Watson.
In favor.
Chair Wells.
In favor.
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Councillor Watson.
If I may have your indulgence, just make a further comment on the accessibility. As the original chair when the Ontario government brought in accessibility standards, and as the original chair of that committee, I'm very pleased to see the progress that we've made in this town, and our new rep on there has got a very good handle on it, and his comments are well received. So I'm happy to see that as these years ago. I think it was 2008 when we formed the committee, so it's hasn't been that long ago, but a few years. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. The second item that's been pulled is the Communication Officer's report dated March 14th, Council Community Outreach. Mike, do you want to come forward in the anticipation that there may be questions? And Councillor Kinney, again, you pulled the report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to Mike, who I've had previous conversations with. To the committee, I'm all forward. I love the concept of getting to meet our public in any forum, and the thought of coffee with council is great, and the barbecue is great. But the first date that was put forward, I believe council, or at least two of the council, have conflict with regards to Move to Give, the YMCA. My understanding is that that commitment at the YMCA runs from 9 till noon, and the suggested timing for this event, being the Coffee for Council, is 10 till noon, which would be a conflict. So I've addressed Mike with that to give us some time to formulate some other thought processes.
Thank you. Mike, do you want to make a comment?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Council. So there's a couple of options. One is we could consider doing it from noon till 2. I don't know what other scheduling conflicts that presents around the table. There may be some. I think the mayor has indicated that she has a...
We all
do?
Yeah, well, it was circulated.
So the other opportunity would be to delay the start until the following month.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And if I can just add, Mr. Chair, the dates that are proposed here, these are just proposed dates. It's proposed to be monthly. It could be bi-monthly. We could do it quarterly. It's really what council would prefer, but we had to come forward with some type of proposed schedule.
So what we're really looking at though now is a monthly.
That's right.
But the date starting could be delayed. Is it 1 month that would require a delay, or is
yeah, so we're looking at, we had proposed an April 6th launch, and the next date is May 18th. There's no other dates in April for the Recplex room. They're booked. So that's part of the challenge.
All right, so I'll have to ask council how they feel about delaying the process by 1 month, and then we'll go from there. Mayor Baffolchi?
Thank you. I was just going to say April 6th we have the Move to Give, but then there was an invitation circulated for council members to attend. Minor Hockey is hosting the All-Stars game this year.
And that's the afternoon, is it?
Well, it starts at noon, so I think even we'll be running from this, trying to get up there as it is, so I think April 6th won't work. I also believe when we originally started talking about this, I don't know that I was with the understanding that it would be every month. I think we jammed in an awful lot of meetings and things, as opposed to maybe we could still do it every month maybe, but maybe we do it as an hour before our council meeting. Serve some coffee and cookies and have that time to intermingle, just because I think, I know my schedule anyways is quite full, and I don't know about the rest of council, but to commit every month might be a lot at this point. If it was every other month or something, and then you have maybe an hour before a council meeting, myself, I think that would be more realistic for some of our schedules. That's all.
Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, I think it's a great idea. I was a big supporter of it, suggested some of the ideas here. One of the things I was looking at though was the June, July, and August. I had hoped we'd be able to tie one of those into have it at Beach Area 2, our municipal picnic area. I think the community has to, if we're keeping that as in some form as it is, the community has to be invited and engaged to be down there. As for the other ones, you know, in the real world, from time to time, we're all going to have meetings, whether it's town related or whether it's personal meetings, and so, you know, these kind of things, I'm not expecting that we'd have 100% attendance all the time. People will try, I know this council will try and be there to all of them, but I mean, life does move on for all of us. So, you know, I think the proposal, whether we delay it a month or not, is not the biggest issue with me, but I do think it should be as consistent as possible. And I'd like my own view, maybe not for this year, but going forward, is, you know, we have it on the second Wednesday or something that's consistent, so people can just, oh yeah, this is it. So anyway, that's my comments. Again, I'd like to see Beach Area 2 being used. I get the small park areas, the neighborhood ones, those are great, but we do have an asset there that we should be using.
Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was also supportive of this initiative based on the fact that a couple of terms of council ago we were doing it on an annual basis in June or July. I don't think I'd suggest doing it any more than quarterly at the moment. I'd be more supportive of semi-annually or quarterly and moving it around than monthly personally. And I have no problem moving it back from April the 6th. I think that's too short a notice on that. I think May at the earliest, but I'm not that supportive of doing it monthly.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Bray.
Thank you. I think it's a great idea. Anytime we get to meet residents is good. I had hoped that it would maybe be combined with existing town events such as Easter Extravaganza. So there's a 2-hour opportunity that council is encouraged to be there to meet with residents. Because we already do a lot of really good community events, and we might be another reason for somebody to come out and see just how great some of these events are and meet our park and go to our sports park. But if we can, as council, maybe go to things that are happening, then we can maybe be one of the attractions.
Councillor Kinney.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mike, and just a general thought process that no matter what we do this year, it'll be a filling out for what we do in future years. So whether or not it appears as a monthly, a quarterly, connected with events, I think it's a good process, and maybe we should send it back to Mike to get a little bit more thought process on how we can take all the thoughts here and melt them into a doable thing for 2019, and then we can go forward for the next couple of years.
Councillor Pelagic.
Thank you, Chair. I really like the idea of moving to where the people are, to their community. If you look at a lot of our meetings, engagement is a challenge at the best of times. Communication is a challenge. We tend to get the same people coming out on a regular basis because they are more engaged. But I think if you can move around to the different neighborhoods, I think it's just much more convenient, and we're going to get people out that we don't normally see, and I think that's a very good thing.
Any other comment at this point? Councillor Watson.
I would suggest maybe we have a dunk tank and maybe
Are you volunteering?
and the chairs of the 4 standing committees for this year maybe started off.
Don't take all suggestions as being of equal value.
It does help with attendance.
I would just make my own comments. I love the idea. I was supportive of it from the beginning. I continue to support it. I actually continue to support the concept of monthly. For me personally, yeah, there may be an occasion where I can't make it, and so be it. I can't make it. If there are 6 of them and I don't make all 6, then I guess I'm subject to the public's decision on how appropriate that was or not. But I like the idea of doing it on a monthly basis. And as I said, I don't believe that every single one of us necessarily has to be there for every single one. There are other things. I do agree with the 6th not being appropriate because of the prior 2 commitments. I guess the other thing I would suggest, Mike, is one of the locations that you recommended. I believe it was the park off Knox Road between Sunnydale Road and 45th Street.
Yes, so Red Oak.
Red Oak Park. I only query that one. I mean, I think it's a great spot to have it, but it's in behind and between 2 development areas. So the accessibility to it in terms of accessibility, which I think is critical. I think we have to look at any of these locations as their accessibility factor. The accessibility to that park is off a road, up a path, up a trail, and back down into the park. There's very little opportunity to park. other than right on Knox Road. So I did have some question as to the appropriateness of that for this particular purpose. So what I sense is that you've got lots of thought that's been given. I think I hear the suggestion that you take those thoughts and come back to us with as quickly as possible. I would hope in early April now, because if we want to start it in May, we need to get an approval in April to have it happen as early as May, and I don't want to delay it to the point where we're 2/3 of the way through the summer. I don't want to see that happen either. So I do think it's worthwhile, and we should just try to accommodate it as best we can. I have taken the liberty of amending the motion slightly to instead of directing staff to proceed with establishing the event, but at this point to bring back a report to general government for consideration, and with the understanding that that would be as quickly as possible. So if I see no further comments or suggestions, I'll read the motion then. It's resolved, the General Government Section of Coordinated Committee recommend to Council that it directs staff to proceed with establishing a Coffee with Council program and a Conversation in the Park program, and bring back a report to General Government Committee for consideration. The timeline will be up to you, Mike, but I don't think it should take more than this next couple of weeks to do that. Okay. Any other comments? Seeing none, we'll call the question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Belanger?
In favor.
Mayor Byfolchi?
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Bray?
In favor?
Councillor Foster?
In favor.
Councillor Kinney?
In favor.
Councillor Watson?
In favor.
And Chair Wells?
In favor.
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
I think we should note that once again, Collingwood Council has, recognized the greatness of one of our ideas, because I hear that they have announced a Coffee with Council meeting in Collingwood. I believe it's this afternoon. So there you go. They've just seen, how advanced and forward-thinking we are, and they have jumped upon that idea. The next item that has been pulled was pulled by Deputy Mayor Bray. It is the Finance and Treasurer's report with respect to the municipal grant program. And Jocelyn, if you'd like to join us. And Deputy Mayor, I'll give you the floor to begin.
Thank you. I just want to point out that we received an update on table today, so the one that's in the agenda that people are reading online is different than the one that we're actually voting on today. So that there was a small kind of formula error under one of the grants, and the Wasaga Christian Church now qualifies, so they are added to the grants that will be approved if this motion goes through today. That was the first thing. The second thing was there was an unsolicited donation to the CGMH fundraising campaign, and I'm not sure if that would qualify within our grant policy to list an unsolicited grant on our.
Through the chair, no, I don't believe it would qualify, and that's why it is listed here to show that it was requested. However, it did not meet the policy requirements, so it has not been included as part of the process.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Sorry, Jocelyn?
Maybe I could just add that the new amount left as a balance in the grant budget that probably would be consumed through the school donations that are given, around $200 we give for those for graduation awards. So there's only $1,055 remaining.
Okay. Thank you, Jocelyn. Thank you for you and your staff for coordinating all of this and piecing it together. I guess I'll only comment that I was the one that had written in the unsolicited grant to the Collingwood General and Marine Hospital. I have no idea why they didn't ask for it, but I guess it was just my own personal belief that there is always an ongoing fundraising
campaign with the Collingwood General Marine Hospital through their foundation for funds for, you know, updating equipment and so forth. And so my thinking and the reason for doing that was that I just believe that as a council, as a town being served so well by Collingwood General Marine Hospital, that this council should be making a donation to their annual fundraising program, and that was my way of considering to have it happen. So that's where it came from. So Deputy Mayor, or sorry, Mayor,
I was just going to say, and I don't know if you're aware of it or not, but at the county level, there is an agreement with the hospitals that they do not go to individual municipalities and request grants and things like that, because the county has a program where they give money and then it gets shared amongst those. So just so you're aware of that, they are not per the agreement to come and specifically request.
I actually am aware of that, and that's specifically why the word unsolicited was used.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to point out that I am a member of Stainer Granite Curling Club. I don't reside on a board or anything of that nature. I had, we've done this grant a number of times, and I had sought clarity on that, and it was said that the financial impact was insignificant on a regular member, and in addition, as I'm taking a year off next year from curling, and this we're at the end of the season, so that's why. And I clarify that only because Councillor Watson did declare a pecuniary interest. I don't feel it is one for myself.
That's certainly a decision you have to make. The integrity commissioners discussed a number of new interpretations which referred to being a member of a body as now being a potential conflict, but without any reference to your own situation. That's the decision you have to make for yourself, and should you decide that it is, then I would suggest at some point you formally declare it, and if not, that's fine too.
Thank you.
Having said that, I will read the motion. It is resolved that the General Government Services section of Coordinated Committee recommend to Council that it approve the grants list in Appendix A to this report under the annual municipal grants program.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Boulanger?
In favor.
Mayor Byfolchi?
In favor.
Deputy Mayor Bray?
In favor.
Councillor Foster? In favor. Councillor Kinney?
In favor.
Councillor Watson?
In favor.
Chair Wells?
In favor.
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Okay. And our last pulled item this morning is counts section 6.6.1, and that was pulled by Councillor Boulanger. And Councillor, I'll give you the floor.
Oh, okay, thank you. Yes, to our treasurer, and I apologize I didn't get it earlier. I would have talked to you, but I was looking at the agendas and everything last night, and there were 2 checks in the under administration check register of substantial amounts for On Georgian Shores Inc. Both listed as contract, one for $6,706.55, one $10,311.42, and I didn't, the description didn't give me any kind of idea what it was, so I just was wanting to know.
So unfortunately, I will have to go back and pull those invoices to be able to look at them and find out what they're for. I don't recognize them just from the name itself. But I will respond. I'll come back with an answer to you.
Okay.
I was just going to say, can you give it to all of us just so we all have the answer?
Yes, is an email fine if
Sure.
I send the email out?
Yep.
Thank you.
Does that satisfy your question?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. No other questions? Resolved that the February 1st, 28, resolved that the February 1 to 28, 2019 accounts as reviewed by General Government Services section of Coordinated Committee are hereby confirmed. Seeing no other comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Boulanger?
In favor.
Deputy Mayor, Mayor Byfolchi?
In favor.
Deputy Mayor Bray?
In favor?
Councillor Foster?
In favor. In
Councillor
favor
Kinney?
still.
Sure.
Really in favor.
Councillor Kinney?
In favor?
Councillor Watson?
In favor?
Chair Wells?
In favor.
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
We are adjourned, and we reconvene as a committee of the whole at 1 p.m.